David Wells, you are the founder and CEO of Family Capital Strategy, a boutique strategy consulting firm working with family offices and family business. And your claim to fame is this book that you just wrote, When Anything is Possible, Wealth and the Art of Strategic Living. David, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So, this is a nice problem to have when a person have enough wealth that they don't know what to do with it. And in fact, anything is possible. They just have to strategize what is it that they want to do, how they can use those resources to the way that benefits them and the community in general. And I guess that's what you have written in your book. My first question, David, is can you tell us a little bit about yourself? How is it that you came into this line of business?
Yeah, no, it's I appreciate the question and the chance to be here today. I think from my background, I came to what I'm doing now, which is working with a really fortunate and interesting slice of humanity, which are families that have chosen to build businesses together over long periods of time, and then have worked really hard and also been really lucky and have seen that generate financial results that are not normal. We'll put it that way. It's very fortunate in that. And so I ended up in this role. I came to it through the investment side, and so spent time as a research analyst in the investment banking world. I ran a hedge fund for 4 years. It's more of a hedge fund has such a kind of a swashbuckling connotation to it. We were more like a long-term kind of Warren Buffett style fund. And really over the course of running my fund, where we had a number of investors that were families. And then prior to starting my firm, I was at a wealth management firm here in Tennessee, where I'm based. Was fortunate to work with a lot of families. And what I found was I enjoyed the investment side, which is really interesting. And how does the market figure out what to do to what companies are going to be successful and see their prices do well or not. But when you bring in the family dynamic, it's like playing 3D chess. Like it's another level of dimension because you have all of the dynamics of the family. So that's psychology and sociology and religion and family dynamics that all kind of come to play. And then all of that then gets expressed in how the assets ultimately get managed. And what I found was the technical side of managing the assets is pretty straightforward. There are best practices that you can implement that set up the portfolio for success. The harder question is how does the family figure out what's important to, where is it going, how's it going to, and what are they trying to accomplish? And that was what the genesis of my firm and the work that we do is really helping families with that strategy piece, and then the kind of strategy plus then building the processes so that then when they go to their wealth management firm or their the investment managers, mutual funds or private equity funds, they're going into it with a very clear direction of this is what we're trying to do. Otherwise, you can either be really disjointed and try and do everything, or which ultimately, if that's the case, you end up frankly less successful.
Right. At what point do you realize that your main job was not going to be anymore just choosing the best stocks or how to improve the return on investment, but actually to talk about this family and how they manage their wealth? There must have been a pivot point somewhere along the line.
Yeah, that's a great question. So at the end of 2015, when we closed down our hedge fund, and it's one of those kind of looking back now, a fortunate occurrence in some ways where I don't think anyone who starts a business ever thinks that it's not going to be successful. And we were, fortunate where the firm didn't blow up. But we didn't really grow. It was kind of like nothing really happened with the business. And after a period of time, it's like, all right, this isn't going to work out. Let's move on. And so from that period of time of after we closed the business, and then really over the last, so that was 2015 through the next kind of 3.5 years, in the course of kind of the day in and day out of my job, a ton of reading, and then I started writing my book. That's really what started to coalesce of saying, you know what, like, thankfully I've got the background and the technical expertise, so I can speak the language and I can go deep with people if they want to get to that level of depth. But really what's more important is this strategic question. And the only way Um, yeah, finding a way to create the on ramp or to open the door for the family to have that dialogue. That was where I felt like I just couldn't find any great resources that were helping tee up the conversation that I wanted to have with clients. So that was kind of, that's like, well, shoot, I may as well make my own. And that was the genesis of the book for sure.
Right. When we open the conversation today, I comment that you have a baby face. My question now is, how do you get families to trust you with their whole future, with someone who is just I don't know, just, I mean, you were managing money, but the one thing is to be managing money in a mutual fund, in a hedge fund, and the other thing is a family saying, here's our life work, tell us what to do with it. How do you earn that credibility?
Yeah. And so I am fortunate in that, I'm nearing 40, so, probably not as young as I look. Um, my the seat that I sit in is either, I kind of view it as like um, a really attuned board member, who then actually helps solve the problem. And so if you've ever served on like a nonprofit board or a for-profit board, like and I serve on a handful, the job there is to help ask the tough questions. The problem is that then it's up to the team to then answer the questions. And so what I do with my clients is to both ask the question and then help them answer it. And so I am an advisor, like, but generally I'm not the only one. And so there are other folks, who have more seniority, who have more background, that can help the family alongside the journey. What I'm really good at, though, is helping, is seeing how the system works, and then finding the points of weakness in it to say, okay, if you go down this path, and you answer this question this way, when you play that forward 5 years, this is what's going to happen. When you play this forward 20 years, this is what's going to happen. And that's a real value add for clients. But as you can imagine, trust is earned, and so just over the course of working with families, I think adding value there, and then working with other trusted advisors, I've been very blessed and fortunate that they tell their friends,
Okay.
and that's
um,
and that's really how it happens.
That's the slow way, but it's the most reliable way to earn trust. Okay, so then you sit down and you decide to write this book when anything is possible. What can you tell us about the book and the content of it?
Yeah. So really the book is designed to help families. And it really, I think the other thing I think is interesting is that it's really, while my day job is working with a group of families that are in really unique financial circumstances, I found that as more people have read the book, that from a broad range of net worths, really for anyone who has reached a point in their financial life and on their path to success where they have more than they need to cover, the rent payment and the food check, or the mortgage payment, and put food on the table. At that point, you are making decisions with what to do with your money based off of some sort of rubric, whether it's what clothes do you wear, how do you furnish your home, what art you put on the wall, or the like. And so the book is designed to help people in families answer three questions, which is what do I have, which includes both the financial resources, obviously, but the other resources that the family brings to bear, the relationships that are in place, the education and skills they have, the causes and things that they're passionate about, the values that they bring. All of those dynamics, maybe not as easily quantifiable as the wealth, but are assets of a person that get deployed to see a return, right? So what do I have? Who am I? Which is a simple question to ask, but harder to answer. Who am I? What am I trying to accomplish with my life? And then where do I want to go? And that's where it's, if you can bring those three pieces or the two pieces together of what do I have and who am I and what do I care most about? Well, then when you sit down and you think about, well, what do I spend, how do I consume? What do I spend money on? Where do I go on vacation? Where do I send my kids to school? How do I invest? What do I want to give to future generations of my family, if that's a priority or not? And then what is my obligation to help the less fortunate? How do I alleviate suffering with my own philanthropic gifts? If you've got those first two pieces in place, it's a lot easier to answer those four questions, Otherwise, what happens is like life gets busy, and we answer those questions, but we've never been really explicit about how we're answering them. It's just something that we do because a friend is involved with a charity and they've got a fundraiser and they say, hey, would you be willing to give some money to support feeding the poor? And you say, oh, great, like that sounds really important. And then, you need to go, the couch wears out and you need to go buy a new couch. And, oh man, we're all really tired and spring break is coming up. So let's go on vacation. But you've never been thoughtful about why you're doing those things. You just do it. And I think that's the natural reality for all of us, is like, we're busy and life is super distracting. So the book is designed to say, if you'll take a few minutes to pause, here's a process and a template of how to have that conversation with yourself, so it's not super painful, so that when you go back to living your life, you're a little bit more informed in the way you do it.
Right. Many, I have heard or read somewhere along the line that many people, when they reach retirement and they achieve that point where they have enough to eat and enough to pay their rent, they feel a deep sense of emptiness because their whole life have been to work, either work towards financial independence or work because that's what everybody else does. So when work is no longer there, and then there is that uncertainty of not knowing what to do with their life. Other than calling you, what are other? You gave us three questions. What do I have? Who am I? And where to go? What else would you suggest for that person who just retired today?
I think the first is to recognize that, and a mentor of mine told me this, and if you'll bear with me, he said that all change in life is initially processed as trauma. That when we go through big events, they rock our world, and it is whether it is a fortunate thing like retirement, where you've reached this goal financially where you can make this change, you win the lottery. Something like a tremendous blessing. You inherit something from a relative more than you ever thought that you would get. Those are positive tragedies in some sense. It is because what it means is that the life that you knew beforehand has ended. The same way that if you were to lose a spouse to a car wreck, you lose a parent passes away. The things that we think of as tragedies, those alter the direction of our lives. The same thing can happen with a fortunate circumstance, because now we have to spend some time figuring out what are we going to do as a result of that. And so I think the first message is recognize that it is going to take some time to process the new reality, and be gentle with yourself and say, yeah, I may feel empty. There's a great study that shows that it's over 50% of business owners who sell their business within 18 months feel empty and they regret the sale because they've lost their life's work. So pause, give yourself the time to make peace with the new reality. But then I would say, then also be curious. Begin to ask the questions of, okay, well, what is it about relative to my former life that I'm feeling the absence of? Is it the fact that my day no longer has a routine? I don't have to be at the office at 9, and I know I've lost that kind of scheduling piece. Is it the uncertainty of not having a paycheck come into the bank account? Even if you've got plenty of money, that can be a really disconcerting thing. And if you can begin to get aware of that, then I think you can begin to structure the remedy for the solution, or what does your new life look like? Maybe it is that you don't have to work, but you find a way to create some of that. You can take a part-time job. You can volunteer regularly. You can mentor and help bring up the next generation of leaders. And you can create some of the lifestyle pieces that feel so uncertain about this new space. But it's not surprising if you go from hard charging 50, 60, 70 hour a week job to nothing, that you kind of wake up on a Monday morning and say, well, what am I supposed to do now? And you've been doing, it's natural, right? You've been doing the same thing for 40 years or however long. And it takes time to kind of to navigate and to find your way to the other side.
Right. You mentioned in your book that 80% of trust beneficiaries find themselves that the trust have negatively impacted their life. So in short, they feel dissatisfied and even worse off for having all this money and not having something to strive for, I guess, to make a living.
Yeah, and isn't it's a fascinating statistic because I think all of us would naturally sit back and say, okay, who is the most fortunate person? You know, if I could be anyone in the world, like the idea that like just by being born, you have these financial resources that are available to you. Like, wow, how fortunate, how awesome would that be? And what I think what they find is that individuals who are in that fortunate circumstance, it, um, you run into a whole host of questions, which is, and maybe you found this to be true, but I found that many of the best things that I have in my life required some suffering to get there. It was like, I have my CFA charter, and as we were chatting before we even started the conversation, like the CFA is an extremely challenging program to do. Like it took hundreds and hundreds of hours, and I failed one of the tests twice, and kept having to stick around. If I didn't have to do that, would I? And I think that is the core level of uncertainty with some folks where they don't have to persist in a job or they don't have to persist in a skill because they're not in it for they don't, there's no question of like, can they put food on the table? Will they have a place to live? Like that's taken care of. The question is like, how do you build the character of a person that voluntarily opens themselves to suffering and heartache because it's connected with something that's a bigger goal for them. And I think that's the challenge of that 80% is to connect their circumstances with who they are in the world and give themselves some direction, because otherwise they're kind of like a boat without a rudder. Like they probably just end up going in circles or standing still.
Wow. Another amazing statistic that you mentioned in your book is that the ultra wealthy think of themselves as not financially secure. That's crazy. I mean, these people who have, I don't know, millions of dollars and that have fear of their personal finance.
And there's an old saying that the greatest tragedy is having to make a second fortune. So it's the if you've done the hard work and you've had the fortunate results of making some serious wealth once, like the natural reality is to never want to have to worry about that again. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that in my experience with working with business owners and families that have built businesses, is that most of them are honest, hardworking individuals where they just have been working and focusing on something for a very long period of time. And so they've shown up every day, they've given it their all, they've grown a business, and then lo and behold, 30 years go by, and suddenly what started as an idea has turned into a business that's making $100 million a year, $1 billion a year, some sort of probably result that's much larger. And so when they sell that business, and you take the wealth that is in the form of the business, and now it's suddenly in a checking account or an investment account, you've got this change of state, and it's a whole new world that they're not equipped to manage. It's a new set of advisors. You've got people who are calling on them that have never been interested in them before, but suddenly because they have wealth, they've got all these new friends. Their existing friends, may or may not want to spend time with them anymore because it's like the athletes that their friends come out of the woodwork to ask for money after their success. And so everything that they knew about their life suddenly becomes uncertain because they don't know the rules of the road of this new world that they're in. And so how do they begin to answer the questions? And then it's like, and I don't know about you, like, I really like cars. I have no idea how to fix my car. And so when I go to the mechanic to have my car fixed, like I'm trusting that this person is going to tell me that like, if it's $1,000 repair, it's actually $1,000 repair. It's not $100 repair that they're then, taking advantage of me on. And I think that's also some of the uncertainty of, even with the advisors that they're working with, it's like, okay, is this person actually really honest? Or like, do they see the fact that I've got a large pool of money and they're going to try and take advantage of me? And I think that's just all of that weighs on that person after the liquidity event. And it takes time to build the new relationships, to figure out who's trustworthy, who on the advisory side is in it for ego and prestige, or who's actually in the business of service. And if you can find those folks, you can begin to build the feeling of security. It's just in that initial period, it's a completely different world than that person has been in before.
Wow. Some of my listeners are part of the FIRE community and they achieve financial independence by being frugal and very careful with their money. And yet, once they achieve financial independence, they still have a hard time making the transition of saying, okay, I can go from time to time to a nicer restaurant. I don't have to shop all the time at Walmart. I could go to a boutique and buy my jeans there instead of Walmart. And they find that transition very difficult to make because all their life they have been saving for this moment, but they have built those habits of always watching for every penny, and it comes to a moment that they don't have to be so careful anymore and they just don't know how to make that adjustment. Could you just say a tip or two to make that adjustment better?
It's interesting, and I've followed the fire community and read a lot of the blogs and find it really interesting. And what I would perhaps remark is that that dynamic is true whether it's you've retired early or if it's you've had a traditional career and you're retiring late. Once you set a standard of living, it's challenging to dial it up. And I think especially if you've been so focused on frugality for the sake of reaching this goal, I think it comes down to the question that I raised in my book, which is in someone there's an author who used this term of horizontal wealth versus vertical wealth, and the idea is that people who are horizontally wealthy, when they hit that fire moment, when they hit that point where they can retire, they don't really know what to do. And so they look around them, they scan the horizon and they say, well, what else do people in my circumstance do? Where do rich people go on vacation? What kind of hotels do they stay at? What cars do they drive? And so they let their consumption being driven by the people that they see around them. And I guess the counterpoint to that is what this individual called vertical wealth, which is how do I take the things that I'm already passionate about doing and turn it up, turn the dial up to 10 or 11, right? Like, so if you already play golf and that's something that's important to you, what would it look like to do that in a different way? Like I read a tremendous amount. So it doesn't behoove me. Like I'm not looking for new hobbies, right? Like I play a lot of golf and I enjoy reading, and that's pretty much my free time when I'm not chasing my kids around. So what does it look like to really invest in those two hobbies? And I think that's the key with anyone who's hitting that point is more like, how do you begin to think bigger about the things that you're already doing? And look, if you don't care about your clothes and fashion, great. Like go buy the $24.99 pair of jeans. Like that's all fine and well, but find the things that you do have good taste on. Like maybe it's coffee, maybe it's travel, maybe it's eating out, wine, bourbon, like whatever your vertical is, and then give yourself the freedom to follow the interest that you've got there. That's, I think, the key on that is just knowing where your categories are that you really care about.
Amazing stuff, David. Well, David, can you tell us one more time the title of your book and where can people follow you?
Yeah, so the book is called When Anything is Possible, Wealth and the Art of Strategic Living. And you can find me in two places, either on my website, and if you go to whenanythingispossible.com, that'll point you in the right direction. And I'm active on Twitter and LinkedIn, and that's at David C. Wells Jr. is the handle there.
David, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. This is great.